On a cold December morning in 1872, the British brigantine Dei Gratia spotted a vessel adrift in the North Atlantic, about 400 miles east of the Azores. The ship was the Mary Celeste, under partial sail, her course erratic, her crew nowhere to be found. The lifeboat was gone, the captain's log ended abruptly, and food and water supplies remained abundant. The ship was seaworthy. Its mystery lay not in its condition, but in its inexplicable emptiness. As Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would later fictionalize in a sensational short story, the problem is as perplexing as the mind can conceive. Neither nature nor man has left its trace. The Mary Celeste was no stranger to ill fortune before her famous voyage. Built in Nova Scotia in 1861 under the name Amazon, she was plagued by accidents: a collision in the English Channel, the sudden death of her first captain, and a grounding off Cape Breton Island. After being salvaged, repaired, and renamed Mary Celeste, she sailed under new ownership. But the air of bad luck clung to her. Historian Brian Hicks, in his study Ghost Ship, noted, "From the start, her life seemed cursed, every mishap a prelude to the great mystery that would immortalize her name." The fateful voyage began on November 7, 1872, when Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and a crew of 7 departed New York for Genoa, Italy. The cargo, barrels of industrial alcohol, was a volatile but not inherently dangerous shipment, if handled properly. Briggs was an experienced and pious seaman, known for his caution. This makes his disappearance all the more baffling. As David Williams, a maritime historian, observed, Briggs was no foolhardy adventurer. He was the very image of prudence at sea. If he abandoned ship, he must have believed the danger was immediate and overwhelming. When Dei Gratia's crew boarded the ghostly vessel on December 5th, they found the sails in disarray, rigging damaged, and a few feet of water in the hold, common after a rough sea. The ship's sextant, chronometer, and papers were missing, presumably taken with the lifeboat. The galley was tidy, personal belongings untouched, and even the captain's sword still lay in his cabin. Food for 6 months, and fresh water for the same remained. In the ship's log, the last entry on November 25th placed Mary Celeste near the Azores, under no apparent distress. It was as if the crew had simply stepped off into the ocean without reason. In the absence of evidence, theories flourished. Early suspicions fell on the Dei Gratia's crew, accused of murdering the Mary Celeste's people to claim salvage rights. But an Admiralty court found no proof, awarding a modest salvage sum that hinted at lingering doubt. Other suggestions ranged from piracy to mutiny to an attack by a sea monster, a sign of how quickly mystery can invite the fantastic. More grounded hypotheses focus on the cargo. Some believe alcohol fumes leaked from the barrels, creating the fear of explosion. Although 9 barrels were later found empty, the cargo had been stowed securely. Still, if the crew detected vapors or heard the ominous creaks of a stressed hull, they might have lowered the lifeboat temporarily, tethered to the ship, only for the line to snap in rough seas. Historian Charles E.D. Fay suggested this scenario, noting, "It requires no villains, no disasters of the supernatural, only the tragic chain of minor miscalculations that turn precaution into catastrophe." Another possibility points to weather. Records indicate the area saw squalls around the time of the disappearance. A sudden waterspout or rogue wave could have panicked the crew, especially if combined with the fear of shifting cargo. Yet, the absence of structural damage makes this less convincing. The story's afterlife is as fascinating as the mystery itself. The Mary Celeste continued sailing under various owners but never shook her reputation as a haunted ship. She was finally wrecked deliberately in 1885 in a failed insurance fraud scheme. By then, her legend had grown to the point where facts blurred into folklore. Conan Doyle's 1884 short story, though wildly fictionalized, cemented the ship's image in the public imagination as a ghostly emblem of the sea's secrets. What is striking is how the mystery has resisted resolution despite advances in forensic analysis and historical research. Modern investigators have reconstructed her course, studied weather records, and even replicated possible cargo explosions in controlled experiments. In one such test, scientists demonstrated how an alcohol vapor ignition could produce a terrifying flash fire without scorching wood or leaving obvious burn marks, a phenomenon that could indeed send a captain like Briggs fleeing with his family, yet no theory fits perfectly, leaving room for doubt. There is also a human element often neglected in retellings, the small personal lives interrupted. Briggs was a man deeply attached to his family, bringing his wife and daughter along for what was intended to be a profitable, uneventful trip. The crew were seasoned sailors, some with families awaiting them in distant ports. Their sudden vanishing is not only a maritime enigma, but a human tragedy with no closure. As Hicks reminds us, it is easy to romanticize an empty ship, harder to remember the flesh and blood people who never reached shore. The Mary Celeste remains an enduring riddle because it sits at the intersection of the known and the unknowable. It is anchored in real history, in documented fact, yet its central event slips through our fingers like water. Perhaps that is why it still captures the imagination, because it reminds us that even in an age of reason, the ocean keeps its own counsel. We are left with an image, a sturdy brigantine drifting silently on an open sea, her sails flapping idly in the wind, her decks eerily still, the voices of those who once worked them swallowed forever by the deep. The mystery is not merely about how they vanished, but about how we, centuries later, still strain to see them in the mist, ghosts not of the supernatural, but of our own relentless need to know. As historian David Cordingley wrote, "The sea does not give up all its secrets. Some ships are wrecked, and some are simply lost. Lost not just to the waters, but to the realm of certainty itself." The Mary Celeste belongs to that realm, sailing still in the imagination, eternally crewed by questions with no answers.